Welcome to Reddit Aliens. People who work the night shift. What's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you? Posted one day ago. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I pumped gas overnight at a highway station in New Jersey for many years and saw just about everything imaginable. But one time at about 2 a.m., a man driving an Audi with South Carolina license plates pulled in for gas with a young girl. The girl was covered up to her chin with a blanket. He asked me to fill it up, but the girl mouthed, "Help me." So I set the nozzle on slow, went into the attendant kiosk and hit the silent alarm. 2 cops quickly came. The man started to drive away, but a cop blocked him with the police car. The breakaway on the dispenser hose worked. The cops made the man exit the car. One talked to him, one leaned in and talked to the girl. Additional cops came. The girl was helped out of the car, and I saw that her hands were tied. The cops put her in one of the other police cars. The man was arrested. His car was impounded and towed. The girl had been abducted. Solo graveyard at the call center for a small security business. I see an alarm go off for the alley door. This has never happened, and I don't know how they got through the lock. I called the local security guard working and then police and watched the thief on the cameras testing all the doors while I waited for the guard. I was behind like 3 more locked and coded doors, but it was scary, hearing him go up and down the stairs to the alley through the wall. He left after 5 minutes, but ooh, that was scary. Was on a closing shift at a bar as a manager, and someone rang our phone and just breathed down the phone at me. Just me and another member of the staff. We both lived nearby, but I phoned us a taxi, dropped her off, and paid for it. Could have been nothing, but I'm not willing to chance it, especially as the girl was 19. I work in a library, and on weekdays we have to go through the building and turn off all the lights. I always hated this, I'm super jumpy, but I always somehow got scheduled only closing shifts. One night, just after midnight, because we have to wait until it's officially closed, I was going about this routine. And we have study rooms that people can rent out. I knew they were empty because all the keys were checked back in, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in one. These lights are motion activated, so that's what caught my attention. I reluctantly go to look, and there's nothing in there. I continue about my task, and lights in the other study rooms keep turning on. It's absolutely freaky, and I never got an answer on what happened, except that my boss told me he's gotten reports of weird shit happening in there. So in my opinion, this place is haunted. It's not super creepy, but creepy enough for me. How would you feel working at a place like this? Comfortable? Pockets full of candy? An acquaintance of mine was guarding a warehouse on a military base in the middle of an empty field. He told me he always had some candy in his pocket for easy access, in case a ghost of a kid appeared. Said kid trespassed and was shot in the 1970s or so, and since then, all the night watchmen who heard a kid laughing or crying tossed candy at their backs, not looking at the source of sound. Another was a police officer working the night shift in a building. A few years ago, a fire destroyed and killed the previous officer working there. He told me it was not a rare occurrence to hear heavy steps, as if someone with police footwear was going upstairs to him. He never saw anything, but since both were colleges, he was not worried at all. When I was younger, I had an agency job cleaning buses at the local depot. The pay was crap, but it was a chill job where you were left to your own devices most of the time. The fleet was mostly modern, but there were a few ancient double-deckers kept around for less grueling duties. One of those buses in particular was haunted. The other cleaner and I would often hear people walking around the top deck when cleaning the bottom deck, and when you were up on the top deck, you'd sometimes hear footsteps slowly coming up the stairwell. They would always stop once they hit the top step. Some nights you'd hear the distinctive creaking sound of the destination blind being cranked from the driver's cabin too, but when you ran down, the blind or its handle hadn't moved an inch. One night, I was on my knees sweeping up broken glass with a dustpan and brush when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Behind the seat I was sweeping in front of, I could see a pair of legs. They were as solid as any other pair of legs, and I remember what they were wearing very clearly: green corduroy trousers, dark socks, and brown brogue. Then they began to bend. I was shitting myself and fell back with my eyes firmly closed. When I dared myself to reopen them, there was nothing there. I finished as quickly as possible and moved on to the next bus. Over a cup of tea, I told the other cleaner I'd seen something weird on that bus, and she just looked at me and went, "Were they green legs?" I never saw those legs again, but apparently she saw them a few times, always just the legs. She never dared to look up and just looked elsewhere until they disappeared. Worked in an aerospace museum in my late teens and early 20s. Huge, echoey building full of wartime planes and spacecraft, tons of history, cool place. Heard a ton of spooky stuff, whether you were alone or with a group. I was closing up one night after a catering deal, and while I was mopping, I felt something behind me and heard a "pardon me" in a man's voice. I stepped to the side, and when nobody passed me, I turned to see if he actually just needed something. Nobody there. Later that same night, I went to clock out, and as I passed under a balcony, was hit with one of those big black binder clips you use to hold a stack of documents together. I looked up, totally dark. Understandable. It was close to 2 in the morning. I continued walking and got hit with another binder clip. I speed walked away and heard a third clip hit the ground behind me. When I clocked out, the auto alarm set, meaning I was the last worker in the building, and I got out of there right quick. Never told anyone, though I'm sure they all would have believed me. That place is known for paranormal activity, especially now. I work in high-end security. I was protecting a client's residence and was alone on the property in the guard shack. The guard shack is a small building close to, but detached from the main mansion. It was around 1 a.m. The building was locked tight and armed. I received a phone call from the house line coming from the staff room. I answered the phone, and there was nothing but silence. I immediately went to the area and found the room empty. I swept the area and that floor of the house, but found nothing. I went back to the shack. 5 minutes later, I get another call on the phone from the house, this time from the spooky effing basement. Nothing on the other line, just silence. I loaded a round in my gun and went into the basement. I checked every corner and then every inch of the house. Found nothing at all. It never happened again after that. That house creeped me out, and most of the other security agents also had spooky happenings there. Have you ever had a similar experience? I know I have. I work at a delivery company. I was a package handler at the time, right before COVID started. My buddies and I would go to gas stations for food on break. We aren't healthy, but I digress. We were sitting in a parking lot of a BP when a woman starts giving us, specifically me, really weird looks, like I had done something to offend her or something. She walks up to us, taps on the window, and starts telling me to go home. The lady then freezes for a second, then goes, "Wait, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I thought you were my son sneaking out." She then goes to grab her phone, then pulls out a picture of my doppelganger. My friends lost it, but I wasn't exactly enthused, more put off than anything. Worked at Best Buy stocking shares a few years ago during the holidays. Only 2 of us in the hole, no biggie. I'm listening to podcasts and music every night. As I'm stocking shelves, I see the most clear possible movement out of the corner of my eye that is possible. I'm talking I would get $1 million that a camera would have caught somebody jogging by. I'm creeped out because the other guy is in the back. As I turn to start to go check that he is, I catch the movement again on the other side of me. When I say I sprinted to the back, I mean I moved like Usain Bolt toward a gold medal. We checked video, and of course there was nothing on it, but that night I knew ghosts were real. I used to work closing shift at Pizza Hut. It was the site of the only unsolved murder case in my town. This kid Randall had been murdered closing, and Pizza Hut had been robbed. They didn't find him till morning. Anyway, all of us that worked closing knew it was haunted and Randall was still around. One night, it was just me and another closer. We heard footsteps above us, and you could see dust fall from the ceiling with each step, but no one was there other than us. We were closing shop, and I see someone standing at the counter wearing an old Pizza Hut shirt watching us, so I tell him I'll be with him in a moment and go grab my other closer who was watching cameras. He never saw anyone come in or out of the outdoors, never dinged to alert us. We walk back out, and he's still there, turn around to check orders, and he's gone. I was pretty freaked out, and my coworker was just like, Well, now you've officially met Randall. He's a good ghost. Always says goodnight to him after that, lol. I was working as a campus security, and I had to close down the main law school building. The building was downtown in a major city and was old enough that the tunnels underneath it were used in the Underground Railroad. Think dirt floors and wooden crossbeams, like you would imagine a mine. There was work going on in the tunnels, not sure what it was, but I think they were reinforcing the supports. Anyways, as part of my routine, I had to go around and check to make sure the building was vacant. I climbed down the ladder into the tunnels. All the contractor lights are off. I say a few, "Hello, anyone there?" and shine my flashlight around, silence for a moment. Then I hear what sounds like a radio tune from the 1920s coming from the tunnel. I immediately climb the ladder and padlock the trap door, arm the motion sensors, and leave. F that. Gas station, years back. Group of boys, racers, pulled up in some Skylines and RX-7s and the like, wanting gas before they went to an illegal burnout or race meet. Being a car guy myself, I felt suckered to taking a look at their cars and seeing what kind of mods or tunes they were running before they all paid for their gas and left. Got back into the store and decided to watch the last 20 minutes of CCTV playback since I wasn't exactly paying attention to everything around me whilst I was indulging in JDM goodness. One of the boy racers had walked into the store, opened the cash register with the code, gone back, opened up some lockers and stole some shit, luckily none of it mine, then walked out store. Spooky part, said boy racer was nowhere to be seen on the outside cameras, wasn't part of the group that rolled up, and didn't show up at any of the blind spot CCTV cameras. Was working the night shift, closing shift in a cinema. Although this cinema was and still is shiny, inviting, and luring, when people visit, I don't think they recall that where it is built was once a morgue for the bodies of the people that were hanged just a few yards away. One night during closing, myself and around 7 other staff members did our normal screen, bathroom, and confectionery station checks to make sure all guests have exited. Each screen had nighttime CCTV, so it was pretty easy to spot anyone left behind. We were closing the main doors, and just as we were doing so, we heard a guest bathroom door give out a long creak, as if someone was pushing it open slowly. We all kind of looked at each other, assuming there was a guest in there, so myself and another staff member went to check it out. When we walked into the ladies' bathroom, all the loo doors were shut, but the one on the very end was wide open. We checked it out, and no one. We called building security to check the place out, and it was confirmed there was no one. Very strange and very uncomfortable. Many things happened in that place, but way too long to list on this particular post. I came back from work on a late shift, got home around 1 a.m. I get inside, change my clothes into sweats and a hoodie, and I went to take the trash out, probably like 1:30 a.m. or so. I go take the trash out, heard some rustling in the bushes in front of my house, then as I'm walking back towards my house, I hear a clear step, step, step toward me. Whip around, and like 10 feet away from me is a guy, like a whole-ass man. I own a few guns, but I had nothing with me. But I'm a bigger dude, so I just planted my feet and was ready for the worst. But he just relaxed, turned, and strolled down the street. Ever since then, I'm always a little on edge and alert when I'm walking around the house at night. Never seen him or anything like it since. Not creepy, just sad. Worked third shift at a grocery store that closed at midnight. I was the manager, so at close I had to make sure that there were no customers left. One night we had a guy sleeping in our deli seating area. I had to awkwardly wake him up and tell him that we were closing, and I had to let him out. He was pretty disoriented, had a bag full of belongings, and didn't smell very good, so it became clear that he was homeless. It was winter, so the poor guy was just spending as much time inside as he could before he had to brave the cold. Came to realize that this guy would spend the whole night walking around outside just to stay warm. It eventually got pretty brutal out, and he took shelter inside a Goodwill drop box and was picked up by the cops one night. Not sure what happened to him, but I think about him sometimes and get sad and angry about the lack of support for people like him in our country. Used to be a janitor and worked late, I went back upstairs to make sure all the lights were off and only had my flashlight on to see. The windows provided next to no light since it was winter. As I walked by an office, an instrumental cover of a children's nursery rhyme began playing. Turns out it was a phone ringtone. The dark and time of night didn't make it any less creepy though, and I have no idea who'd be calling a sales office that late at night. As far as I knew, the rest of the phones in the building used a generic ringtone. 2008, McDonald's, 17 years old, cleaning the playpen with my shift manager, also 17. No one else in the entire lobby but us. Suddenly, music cuts off and I hear what sounds like a little girl laughing, which turns to crying, then screaming. I turn to my manager and she just says, "You heard that too, yeah?" Not even a second later, the music comes back on, but is insanely loud, louder than we'd ever have in the store. We both ran to the office. She checked the cams to check if someone maybe messed with the sound system, but no one stepped foot in the office for over an hour. Then we asked everyone behind the counter, and they said the music was fine, they didn't hear anything. We just left it to demon ghost activity and asked to be taken off night shift for a while. I've been racking my brain wondering what store this person works in. Maybe you can figure it out. So I work the overnight shift at my local hardware store, and for anonymity, let's call it Gnome Depot. Every so often, in a certain area, there'll be some weird things that happen, such as boxes falling off perfectly flat carts, product that will fall off their hooks, disembodied footsteps, some faint voices, and an uncomfortable feeling of being watched. Also, there's sometimes a faint smell of perfume coming from that area. While some of it could very well be other associates in the store, we have about 6 to 10 associates in the store all night. We all usually keep to our own departments and don't go wandering off. The area in question is also kind of out of the way of any area most associates would go to, such as the break room, time clock, etc. So we don't usually go there unless we have to. I work at a hospital, second shift. Once I stayed into third because we were short-staffed. It was about 2:30 to 3 a.m. I go downstairs to clock out. Our department headquarters is in the basement. I go down and I'm almost to the office. The door at the end of the hall opens. In walks a middle-aged, 5'10"-ish white man. Doesn't say a word and doesn't wave. Nothing. Just walks past me. The door leads outside and the trash and linen pickup are out there. It's not a public entrance, only for people in my department. These are badge-only entrances or exits. I told my coworker about it the next day. He had absolutely no idea who the man was or why he was down there. My coworker has worked at that hospital for 25 years. How or why does he not know this man? There's no trash or linen people on third. He was indeed wearing our scrub color. No one could identify him or tell me why he was down there. The hospital I work for has color-coded scrubs, nurses blue, CNAs gray, etc.